Today's 10-minute tarot focuses on the first card of the Major Arcana, the Fool. The Fool begins the journey throughout the entirety of the 78 Keys of Wisdom, or the deck of tarot itself. What I'm going to do is have as the focal point the image of the Fool. I'm using the Rider-Waite deck. I may switch the decks out here and there as we move a little bit more through this series, but I want to stick with some consistency as well, and a deck that most people are familiar with. So what I'm going to do is, as I begin to talk and give you a little more information about what my interpretation of the Fool is, I'm going to change the screen so that you have the opportunity to see the image of the card, and you can use it as a contemplative focus as you're listening to the words that I'm saying. I found this to be really useful in a lot of different ways for a lot of the different classes that I teach. And so I thought that particularly in this case, since we're trying to cram a lot into a very short period of time, it would be really helpful for you to have something to focus your attention on, and also have that thing be exactly what you're hearing in terms of description. So let's get started. The Fool begins the journey through the other keys of the Major Arcana, and is also the place of return as we emerge from that journey transformed and ready to begin anew. Numerologically, the number of the Fool, 0, can be envisioned as a gateway or portal that is continuous and limitless in its directive. It is also, in its imagery and shape, the place of entry or opening, as well as the point of leaving or pouring something from its depths. These ideas give clue to the energy that abounds within the Fool and its assignation as key 0. The Fool takes on many names and characteristics, depending on the application and also depending upon where it fits into the journey that the individual is on at any given moment. The semantics of that title is misleading, and so we have to look deeper into what is the true nature of the Fool. We're conditioned to hear the word fool, and we conjure up images of an individual who is uninformed, an individual that is haphazard in action, an individual that lacks insight, that has no common sense, and blithely goes along accepting whatever may come as happenstance. But we can also think of the Fool as being that place of naivete, that place where nothing is scripted yet, nothing is written, and all that awaits is boundless potential for what the adventure, for what that journey can bring. We can also think of the Fool as being that part of our consciousness that is at once open and receptive to what flows through its landscape, but also has a certain amount of freedom and self-empowered liberation in what course will be chosen. We can imagine this very much in decisions that we make. And are we making them from the space of consciousness that is aligned with the receptivity and resiliency of the Fool? Or are we trying to maneuver and wrangle them into something that is much more structured? Neither way is good nor bad, but being aware of how you can actually make use of the Fool's non-expectation can be something that in and of itself can allow you to feel very empowered about how and where and what your choices will be, and what decisions will evolve. Now, in accord with the universal laws, one of which being cause and effect, we could consider the energy of the Fool in this way. I believe that the Fool is the penultimate poster child for cause and effect. If we gather up all of our belongings, and in looking at the traditional Rider-Waite card, those belongings are lean and sparse, containing just enough to be carried in a scarf, tied, and slung with little thought over the shoulder. So if we gather up those things that we consider to be essential about ourselves, or those things that are essential that we need, and we set off facing the sun, we set off facing what we may not be familiar with, and we know that it is going to be vastly different from what we have left behind. And that sets into motion a cycle of cause and effect. However, if we stand forever resistant, hesitant, and in fear, and allow ourselves not to trust the process, then the cause and effect still ripples through, but we are not truly moving forward, either in direction nor in the literal semantic of what that word means. Something that has always stood out for me about this particular key is what is left to the imagination. We have some ideas and we have some assumptions about what the Fool is stepping off into. Is it a ledge? Is it a precipice? Is it a cliff? Is he so blindly enamored with what he is being drawn to that there is no thought given to the fact that the next step taken could be the last taken? I've always loved that thought of unknowing, and I've always loved that energy that surrounds the Fool. It's not a matter of not having common sense. Common sense would dictate that you would at least possibly look down to see what your next movement should be and where it might take you. But in the case of the Fool, there is unconditional trust. I would say even more than trust, there is a laissez-faire attitude that regardless of what may occur, what may transpire, I am moving forward and I am leaving behind whatever it is that follows and nips at my heels. I am moving towards the unknown, and just in that very action and that very notion of intention, I am opening the gateway and opening the potential and the possibility for what actually could be. The Fool is one of those keys that I believe should be a life's lesson for how we should, or let me rephrase that, how we could proceed along our mundane and our spiritual path. Because the Fool is actually a beautiful sweet spot that comes between formulating a clear intention for what it is you hope to achieve and what the outcome and what the product is of that thing can be, as determined by how you approach it. And if you are willing as the Fool to face the unknown and have no expectations about what the actual expectation will become. This is not to say that you're blindly following something, and this is also not to say that you have no intention. What it does mean is that you are surrendering to what the potential of any dynamic outcome can be. You are allowing the space to be filled, the void to be filled with whatever is needed in that actual moment and in that imminent moment. The Fool offers you this grace. It offers us this ability to approach anything from a fresh perspective, to be able to stand unscathed, unjaded, and unmarred by all the things that we wish to be. All of those things that we hope to be, and instead the Fool stands right at the precipice of not knowing. And in that space of not knowing, this is where the opening for true gnosis and knowingness may evolve and may transpire. The Fool, key 0. What lay within may be offered and given without, and what is without may return to itself in perfect love and in perfect trust. This is the lesson of the Fool. So mote it be.